I'm Bella, 34 years old, and for the last decade, I have been the invisible glue holding the Mitchell family together. But the message that finally shattered my illusion of family arrived at exactly 3:47 on a dreary Tuesday afternoon. I was standing in the break room of the pediatric wing where I work as a head nurse. My feet were throbbing, a dull, rhythmic ache that you only get after 12 hours on vinyl floors. I had just spent the last hour calming down a terrified 4-year-old who needed stitches, and my emotional tank was hovering somewhere near empty. All I wanted was 5 minutes of silence and a lukewarm cup of coffee. Then my phone buzzed against the hard plastic of the table. It wasn't just a single vibration. It was a rapid-fire sequence of buzzes that usually signaled a crisis. My heart jumped into my throat. My first thought, instant and terrifying, was Sophie, my 7-year-old daughter. Had something happened at school? Was it a meltdown? Was she hurt? I snatched the phone up, my hands trembling slightly. But it wasn't the school. It was the Mitchell family Christmas group chat. I unlocked the screen, and there it was. A text from my mother, Linda. It was casual, almost cheerful, written with the breezy tone of someone announcing a sale at Macy's or a change in the weather. This Christmas, we're hosting your sister's fiancé, Brandon, and his parents. They are very traditional, high-status people. We won't have room for you and Sophie at the table. I read it once. Then I read it again. The fluorescent lights of the break room seemed to flicker and dim. The air felt suddenly too thin to breathe. We won't have room for you and Sophie at the table. My daughter, Sophie, is autistic. She is beautiful, brilliant, and sees the world in colors and patterns that most people miss. But to my mother, she was apparently just something that took up space. Something that didn't fit the traditional image she wanted to project to my sister's wealthy future in-laws. Before I could even process the cruelty of that statement, the follow-up messages started pinging in, piling on top of the first like stones being thrown at a glass house. Jessica, my younger sister, the golden child, the princess who had never worked a hard day in her 26 years, chimed in immediately. But we still need you to cook like always. Brandon's mom loves beef Wellington, and nobody makes it like you. Also, can you pick up the wine? I sent a list. And then my father, Robert, the man whose retirement fund I had secretly topped up 3 times in the last 2 years. And don't make us feel bad about it, Bella. We need this to go perfectly for your sister. I still want my expensive gift, by the way, that ping driver. I sat down. I had to. If I hadn't, my knees would have buckled. I sat there in the sterile smell of the hospital, watching other families walk by in the hallway. I saw a father carrying a sleeping toddler, smoothing her hair with a gentleness that made my chest ache. I saw people living their normal lives, holding hands, laughing, being family. Meanwhile, I was reading these words over and over, hoping they would rearrange themselves into something that made sense, something that wasn't pure, unadulterated rejection. Where are you watching from today? I'd love to know who is listening to my story. Drop your city or country in the comments below, and please hit subscribe because what happened next changed everything. Here's the thing you have to understand. This wasn't shocking, not really. Deep down, in the places we don't like to look, I knew this was coming. This was just a Tuesday in the Mitchell family. For years, I had been the designated cook, the gift buyer, the emotional support animal, and the walking ATM. When Jessica graduated law school, a degree she barely uses, who paid for the graduation party? Me. When Dad needed knee surgery and his insurance copay was higher than expected, who swiped her credit card without asking for a dime back? Me. When Mom wanted to impress her book club with catered food, who spent all night in the kitchen making hors d'oeuvres for free? Me. Always me. But apparently, none of that earned Sophie and me a seat when it actually counted. I glanced at my phone's wallpaper. It was a picture of Sophie from last week, wearing her noise-canceling headphones and smiling that rare, radiant smile as she arranged her Lego blocks by gradient color. I thought about how excited she had been yesterday. She had asked me, in her quiet, precise voice, if we could make sugar cookies for Santa. She had been practicing her polite greeting for Grandma and Grandpa. How was I supposed to go home and explain to my 7-year-old that Grandma didn't want us there? How do you tell a child that her existence is considered an embarrassment? My phone buzzed again. Another message from Jessica. Don't forget the golf clubs are almost $1,000. Dad sent the link. Make sure you order today so it arrives by the 24th. Right. Let me just spend a fortune on the man who couldn't save his granddaughter a chair. Let me spend a month's mortgage payment on a gift for a father who prioritized his vanity over my daughter's dignity. I sat there, staring at the screen, and I felt something shift inside me. It wasn't sadness anymore. Sadness is heavy. It pulls you down. This was different. This was hot. This was sharp. It felt like a wire snapping under too much tension. For the first time in my life, I didn't type back, "Okay, Mom." I didn't type, "Sure, Jessica." I did something I had never done before. I turned off my phone. I slid it into my pocket, stood up, and walked back out onto the floor. But the Bella who walked out of that break room wasn't the same woman who had walked in. The rest of my shift passed in a blur of autopilot efficiency, but my mind was stuck in a loop of memories. It's funny how a single moment of betrayal can unlock a vault of past hurts you thought you had buried. As I checked vitals and updated charts, I found myself thinking back to last Christmas. The snow had been heavy that year. I had driven 2 hours through a blizzard to get to my parents' house, my SUV loaded down with groceries I had paid for. I remember the trunk was filled with organic turkey, 3 types of potatoes, expensive wines, and piles of gifts. I had arrived, shaking from the cold and the stress of driving on icy roads, carrying Sophie, who was overwhelmed by the change in routine. Did anyone come out to help me unload? No. My father was in his recliner watching football. Jessica was upstairs doing her makeup. Mom was rearranging the nativity scene for the 10th time. I made 4 trips out to the car in the snow. And then, the dinner. I cooked for 8 hours. I missed the family photos because I was basting the turkey. I missed the opening of the stockings because I was whipping the cream for the pie. And when we finally sat down, Sophie had an accident. She had reached for a snow globe on the mantel, a cheap plastic thing from Walmart. Her motor skills weren't always perfect. It slipped. It shattered. The silence that followed was deafening. "Really, Bella," my mother had sighed, looking at the water on the carpet as if it were toxic waste. "Can't you control her? That was a collectible." It wasn't a collectible. It was $5.99. But the look in her eyes, cold, annoyed, disgusted, had cut me to the bone. I spent the next 20 minutes on my hands and knees scrubbing the rug while they went back to their eggnog. I remembered the gifts that year, too. I had bought Jessica a designer handbag she had circled in a magazine, $400. I had bought Mom a spa package and Dad a new tablet. I had spent nearly $2,000 on them, dipping into my savings, wanting to buy their love, wanting to prove I was successful, worthy. And what did I get? A pair of socks. Not even nice wool ones. Just a 3-pack of cotton socks from the discount bin. And for Sophie, a coloring book that was clearly meant for a toddler, not a 6-year-old. "We figured she wouldn't know the difference," Dad had said, shrugging as he unwrapped his expensive tablet. I had swallowed that lump in my throat. I had smiled. I had said thank you, because that's what I was trained to do. I was the provider. I was the fixer. But it went deeper than gifts. As I drove home from the hospital that Tuesday evening, the financial reality of my relationship with my family started to crystallize in my mind. 2 years ago, when the roof on their house started leaking, who did they call? Not a contractor. They called me. "Bella, honey, we're just a little short this month," Mom had cried. "The pension check hasn't cleared." I wrote a check for $12,000. $12,000. That was my emergency fund. That was supposed to be for Sophie's future therapy needs. "We'll pay you back," Dad had promised. They never paid back a cent. In fact, they never mentioned it again. It was as if the money had appeared by magic. Then there was Jessica's car. When her transmission blew out last summer, somehow it became my emergency. "She can't go to job interviews without a car, Bella. You want your sister to be successful, don't you?" Another $3,500 gone. I gripped the steering wheel of my car until my knuckles turned white. I wasn't a daughter to them. I wasn't a sister. I was an insurance policy. I was a safety net. I was an ATM with a pulse. And the worst part? I had allowed it. I had enabled it. I had taught them that they could treat me like a doormat and I would still thank them for wiping their feet on me. But this time they had targeted Sophie. They could take my money, they could disrespect my time, they could eat my food and give me socks. But telling me that my daughter, my innocent, wonderful daughter, wasn't good enough to sit at their table, that she was a stain to be hidden away from their fancy new in-laws, that was the line. I pulled into my driveway and saw the lights on in the living room. Mrs. Patterson, my neighbor, who watched Sophie when I worked late, waved from the window. I turned off the engine, but I didn't get out immediately. I sat in the dark, listening to the ticking of the cooling engine. I thought about the text messages still sitting unread on my phone. "Don't make us feel bad. I still want my gift." The audacity was breathtaking. They felt so entitled to my servitude that they actually believed they could banish me from the dinner and still demand my labor. They thought I was so desperate for their approval that I would drop off the food, hand over the gifts, and then quietly disappear into the night like a shameful secret. A dark, cold laugh bubbled up in my throat. It sounded foreign to my own ears. "Not this time," I whispered to the empty car. "Not this time." When I walked inside, Sophie was sitting on the floor of the living room, surrounded by her collection of dinosaur figures. She had them lined up in a perfect parade, heading toward the Christmas tree. "Mama," she chirped, not looking up, but flapping her hands happily. "The T-Rex is leading the expedition to the North Pole." "That sounds like a very dangerous expedition, baby," I said, dropping my bag and kneeling beside her. I buried my face in her hair, smelling her strawberry shampoo. She smelled like innocence. She smelled like love. Mrs. Patterson smiled at me from the sofa. "She's been an angel, Bella." She drew a picture for her grandmother. My stomach lurched. Sophie held up a piece of construction paper. It was a drawing of a table, a big, long table. There were stick figures all around it. She pointed a small finger at each one. "This is Grandma. This is Grandpa. This is Auntie Jess. This is the new Brandon. And this," she pointed to two figures at the end holding hands, "is Mama and Sophie, eating turkey." I felt tears prick my eyes, hot and stinging. She was so excited. She had no idea that the people in that drawing viewed her as a liability. After Mrs. Patterson left, I made dinner, macaroni and cheese, Sophie's favorite. We ate in comfortable silence, Sophie explaining the aerodynamic properties of reindeer. Then my phone rang. It was Jessica. I stared at the screen. My thumb hovered over the decline button. But then a thought occurred to me. I needed to hear it. I needed to hear them say it out loud. I needed to let the anger solidify into something unbreakable. I answered, "Hello?" "Finally!" Jessica's voice was shrill. "Why have you been ignoring the group chat? Mom is freaking out." "I was working, Jessica. I have a job, remember?" "Whatever. Look, I need to go over the menu. Brandon's parents are used to a certain standard. Mom said you're making the beef Wellington, but we also need those crab puffs you made last year." "Oh, and can you make a vegan option? Brandon's cousin might come and she's vegan." She didn't ask. She demanded. She listed off dishes that would take days of preparation and hundreds of dollars in ingredients. "And Bella," her voice dropped to a conspiratorial whisper, "about the wine. Don't get the cheap stuff from Costco. Brandon's dad is a wine snob. We need the bottles from that vineyard in Napa. You know, the 80 ones." I stood in my kitchen, holding a dirty mac and cheese pot, and listened to my sister spend my salary. "Is that all?" I asked, my voice dangerously calm. "No," she said, and I could hear her chewing gum. "Mom wanted me to remind you about the drop-off. You should probably bring the food over around 2 p.m. on Christmas Day. That way, you can set everything up in the kitchen and leave before the Sinclairs arrive at 4. We don't want any awkward overlap." Awkward overlap. That's what she called us. "And Bella," she added, "if you do have to bring Sophie for the drop-off, just keep her in the car, okay? Or in the kitchen. We haven't really explained her situation to the Sinclairs yet. We don't want to scare them off." The world stopped. Scare them off. My daughter was not a monster. She was not a disease. She was a child. "Jessica," I said, my voice trembling, not with sadness, but with a rage so pure it felt like clarity. "You want me to buy $500 worth of wine, cook a 5-course meal for 12 people, deliver it to the house, set it up, and then hide my daughter in the car like a dog?" "God, Bella, don't be so dramatic," she huffed. "It's just for one day. You know how important this wedding is for me. You're the older sister. You're supposed to support me. Stop making everything about you." "And Dad's golf clubs?" I asked. "Oh yeah, make sure you get the graphite shafts. He's been talking about them all week. Don't disappoint him, Bella. You know how he gets." I looked at Sophie. She was humming softly, rocking back and forth as she colored the T-Rex green. "I won't disappoint him," I said, quietly. "I understand perfectly now." "Good," Jessica said. "I'll send you the updated list. Love you, mean it." The line went dead. I looked at the phone in my hand. Love you, mean it. The catchphrase of the narcissist. I walked over to my laptop and opened it. I logged into my bank account. I looked at the balance. I had saved $3,000 for this Christmas. It was meant to cover the food, the gifts, the wine, the decorations for their house. I looked at the add-on card section. My parents had a credit card linked to my account. It was for emergencies, but the statement showed charges for manicures, golf fees, and liquor stores. I took a deep breath. It was time to make some changes. The next morning at the hospital, I was changing the dressing on a young boy named Leo. Leo was 8, battling leukemia, and he had more grace in his little finger than my entire family combined. "Does it hurt?" I asked gently as I peeled back the tape. Leo shook his head, though I saw him wince. "It's okay, Nurse Bella. You're gentle. My mom says you have angel hands." I smiled, though my heart felt heavy. "Your mom is very nice." "She's sad today," Leo whispered. "She's worried about the bill. I heard her crying on the phone." I looked over at Leo's mom, sleeping in the chair in the corner, exhausted, wearing the same clothes for 3 days. She would give anything to have her son at a Christmas table, regardless of status or awkwardness. She loved him simply because he existed. That was the moment it snapped. Comparing Leo's mother to mine was like comparing the sun to a black hole. One gave warmth until she burned out. The other consumed everything around her and gave back nothing but darkness. I finished with Leo and walked to the nurse's station. Sarah, my best friend and fellow nurse, was drinking a Red Bull. She took one look at my face and put the can down. "Okay," she said. "What did they do now?" I handed her my phone. I showed her the texts from Mom. I showed her the list from Jessica. Sarah read them in silence. Her jaw tightened, her eyes narrowed. When she looked up, she looked ready to fight someone. "Bella," she said, her voice low and serious. "You know I love you, right?" "I know." "Then listen to me. They don't love you. They love what you provide. You are not a daughter to them. You are a utility. You are like the electricity or the Wi-Fi. They only notice you when you stop working." "I know," I whispered. "I think I've always known. But Sophie, calling her an embarrassment? It's abuse, Bella, financial and emotional abuse. And if you cook that dinner, if you buy those golf clubs, you are teaching Sophie that it's okay to be treated like trash. Is that the lesson you want to give her?" The words hit me like a physical blow. Is that the lesson you want to give her? No. Sophie deserved to see a mother who respected herself. Sophie deserved to know that she was a priority, not an inconvenience. "No," I said, straightening my spine. "No, it's not." "So what are you going to do?" Sarah asked. I looked at the calendar on the wall. It was December 21st, 4 days until Christmas. "I'm going to give them exactly what they asked for," I said, a dangerous glint entering my eye. "They want space? I'll give them space. They want me to handle the finances? I'll handle them." I pulled out my phone and opened my banking app again. Step 1. The credit card. I tapped on the card ending in 4598, the one in my mother's purse. I hit Freeze Card. Then, for good measure, I hit Report Lost Stolen. That would ensure it couldn't be reactivated easily. Step 2. The budget. I looked at that $3,000 in my savings, the money earmarked for their ungrateful mouth. "Sarah," I asked, "have you ever been to New York City at Christmas?" Sarah grinned, realizing exactly where my mind was going. "It's magical. The tree at Rockefeller Center, the skating, the window displays." "The Plaza Hotel," I mused, Home Alone 2 style. "Kevin McAllister living his best life," Sarah laughed. "But it's expensive, Bella." "I have $3,000 right here," I said, tapping the screen. "And I have a week of vacation time I haven't used." "Do it," Sarah urged. "Book it right now, before you chicken out." My fingers flew across the screen. I found a website, The Plaza, December 23rd to December 26th. A suite, not a regular room, a suite. City view, breakfast included. The total came to $2,800. It was an obscene amount of money for 3 nights. It was irresponsible. It was crazy. I thought about my dad's golf clubs. I thought about the expensive wine for the snobby in-laws. I thought about Sophie being told to hide in the car. I hit Confirm Booking. A wave of adrenaline washed over me. It was terrifying. It was exhilarating. I felt lighter than I had in years. "I did it," I breathed. "Good," Sarah said, raising her Red Bull in a toast. "Now, the hard part. Don't tell them." "I won't," I said. "They want me to disappear? Fine, I'll disappear. Let's see how much they enjoy Christmas when the help goes on strike." That evening, the atmosphere in my house changed. The heavy cloud of rejection lifted, replaced by the electric buzz of a secret mission. "Sophie, baby, come here," I called out. Sophie wandered in, holding her favorite stuffed pterodactyl. "Yes, Mama?" "How would you like to go on a big adventure?" Her eyes widened. "Like an expedition?" "Exactly like an expedition. To a place with a giant Christmas tree, bigger than a house, and ice skating, and a hotel that looks like a castle." "New York?" she asked. Sophie had a near photographic memory for maps and geography. Yes, New York, just you and me. No cooking, no cleaning, no driving in the snow to Grandma's house. Just us. She processed this. Will Grandma be sad? The question stung. Even after everything, her first instinct was empathy. Grandma has a lot of people coming to her house, I said carefully, choosing my words so I wouldn't lie but wouldn't wound her. She needs to focus on them. So we are going to have our own special celebration. Sophie nodded solemnly. Okay, I will pack Perry. I went to my bedroom and pulled down the suitcases. Usually, packing for Christmas meant loading boxes of food, gifts, and formal clothes I hated wearing. This time, I packed thick sweaters, scarves, my favorite boots, and Sophie's noise-canceling headphones for the city noise. As I folded clothes, my phone kept buzzing. Buzz. Mom. Buzz. Jessica. Buzz. Dad. I didn't turn it off this time. I just silenced the notifications. I needed to keep the line open just in case, but I refused to engage. Jessica sent a photo of a table setting. Do you think these napkins go with the tablecloth? Answer me, Bella. Also, did you order the clubs yet? Shipping is getting tight. I looked at the message and felt a strange sense of detachment. It was like watching a movie of someone else's life. The old Bella would be hyperventilating right now, rushing to Amazon, paying for overnight shipping. The new Bella just swiped the notification away. I opened a folder on my laptop. I named it Liberty. Inside, I started dragging files. PDFs of bank statements from the last 5 years, screenshots of text messages asking for money, photos of the checks I had written for the roof, the car, the medical bills, the receipt for the graduation party. I wasn't just leaving, I was building a defense. I knew my family. When they realized I wasn't coming, they wouldn't just be mad, they would play the victim. They would tell everyone, the extended family, the Sinclairs, the neighbors, that I was the ungrateful daughter who ruined Christmas. I needed receipts, literally and figuratively. I printed out the last 6 months of transactions from the credit card my mother used. Sephora, $150. Liquor World, $200. Pro Shop Golf, $180. Nail Salon, $80. I highlighted every single charge that wasn't an emergency. It was a sea of neon yellow highlighter. It was sickening. I had been working double shifts, missing weekends with Sophie, standing on my feet until they bled so my mother could get gel manicures and my father could play golf. I put the stack of papers in a manila envelope and placed it on the kitchen counter. I wasn't going to use it yet, but it was there, my nuclear option. Sophie walked in, dragging her small suitcase. I packed 3 pairs of socks and my dinosaur encyclopedia. Perfect. I kissed her forehead. You're a professional traveler. Mama? Yeah? I'm glad it's just us, she whispered. Sometimes Grandma's house is too loud, and they look at me weird when I flap. My heart broke and healed all at once. She knew. Children always know. Nobody will look at you weird in New York, baby, I promised her. In New York, everybody is flapping about something. She giggled. It was the best sound in the world. I looked at the packed bags. I looked at the dark windows of my quiet house. Tomorrow, we would be on a train. Tomorrow, the bomb would go off. But tonight, for the first time in years, I wasn't dreading Christmas. I was reclaiming it. The days leading up to the 23rd were a masterclass in psychological warfare executed through the medium of silence. By December 22nd, the family group chat had evolved from demanding to frantic and finally to aggressive. Mom, Bella, are you getting these? I need to know if you bought the truffle oil. The grocery store here is out. Jessica, seriously? You're ghosting us right now? That is so immature. Dad, Pick up the phone, Isabella. This is ridiculous behavior. We have a schedule to keep. I watched the messages roll in like storm waves crashing against a cliff. I didn't respond. Not a single word. At work, I cleared my desk. I told my supervisor I would be unreachable for 4 days. I told Mrs. Patterson she could have the spare key to water the plants. I spent my lunch break at the bank, printing out the final official statements. The teller, a kind woman named Brenda, who knew me well, looked at the stack of withdrawals transferring to my parents' accounts over the years. "Honey," she said, lowering her glasses, "you know this is enough to buy a second house, right?" "I know, Brenda," I said, my voice steady. "I'm stopping it. Today." "Good for you." She stamped the papers with a satisfying thud. "Cut the cord." That evening, the night before our departure, the phone rang. It wasn't a text this time. It was a call from Jessica. I stared at it. It was 8 p.m. They were probably panic planning. I decided to answer. One last time. To give them one final chance to be human beings. "Hello?" "Oh my God, finally!" Jessica screamed. There was no hello, no how are you, just pure entitlement. "Where have you been? Do you have the menu ready? I need you to come over tomorrow morning instead of Christmas Day to start prepping the vegetables." Tomorrow morning, the morning of my train to New York. "I can't come tomorrow, Jessica," I said calmly. "Why not? Are you working? Call in sick. This is my wedding prep, Bella. It's more important than some kid with a running nose." "I'm not working," I said, "and I'm not coming over." Silence. Then a scoff. "What do you mean you're not coming over?" "I mean I'm not cooking the dinner. I'm not buying the wine, and I'm not buying Dad's golf clubs." "Is this because of the table thing?" Jessica's voice dripped with condescension. "Bella, grow up. Mom explained it to you. It's about optics. You can't just abandon the family because your feelings are hurt. That is so selfish." "Selfish?" I repeated the word, tasting the irony. "Jessica, look at your bank statement. Look at who paid for your degree. Look at who paid for your car repairs." "That's different," she snapped. "That's what family does. You have a good job, you help out. But now you're trying to ruin my big day because you're jealous that I'm getting married into a wealthy family and you're alone." There it was, the cruelty, the naked disdain. "I'm not alone," I said, my voice hardening into steel. "I have my daughter." "The daughter you want me to hide in the car." "She makes people uncomfortable, Bella. She groans when she eats. She flaps her hands. The Sinclairs are refined people. We just want one day where everything is perfect. Why can't you give me that?" "I gave you everything, Jessica, for years, but I'm done." "If you don't show up," Jessica threatened, her voice lowering, "Mom says you're cut off. No more family dinners, no more us." I looked around my living room. I looked at the Liberty folder on the counter. I looked at Sophie sleeping peacefully on the couch. "You're not cutting me off, Jessica," I said softly. "I'm cutting you off." "What?" "I resign. Find another cook. Find another ATM. I'm done." I hung up. My hand was shaking, but not from fear. It was the adrenaline of a prisoner who had just dug the last scoop of dirt from the tunnel. Then my phone lit up again. Mom. Then Dad. Then the group chat exploded. "Mom, you ungrateful little brat, after everything we did for you?" "Dad, you better have bought those clubs, Isabella, or don't bother coming home." I didn't block them. Not yet. I wanted to see it. I wanted the record. I took screenshots of every single threat, every single insult. I added them to the Digital Liberty folder. These were my receipts. If they wanted to paint me as the villain to the extended family, I would have the evidence to prove otherwise. I went into the kitchen and opened a bottle of wine. Not the expensive Napa Valley red I was supposed to buy for them, but a decent Merlot I liked. I poured a glass and toasted the empty room. "To optics," I whispered. Then I went to sleep, and for the first time in 10 years, I didn't dream about burning turkeys or disappointing my father. I dreamed of snow in Central Park. December 23rd dawned crisp and gray, the kind of winter morning that smells like impending snow. But inside my chest, it felt like spring. We were up at 6 a.m. Sophie was vibrating with excitement, wearing her earmuffs and clutching her travel journal. "Train day, she chanted, spinning in circles in the hallway. I loaded the car. As I was locking the front door, Mrs. Patterson came out to get her paper. She was wrapped in a thick wool coat, her breath puffing in the cold air. "Off to the races?" she asked, eyeing the suitcases. "Off to New York," I corrected, smiling. "Good," she nodded firmly. "I saw your mother at the grocery store yesterday. She was telling Mrs. Higgins that you were preparing a feast for them, taking all the credit as usual." I laughed, a sharp bark of sound. Well, she's in for a surprise. I'm officially retired from feast duties. Mrs. Patterson winked. "About time, honey. You go have fun. Turn off that phone." We drove to the train station. The Amtrak arrived on time, a silver bullet cutting through the dreary landscape. As we boarded and found our seats, I felt the physical weight of my hometown falling away. Every mile we put between us and my parents' house felt like a chain breaking. But of course, the chaos was just beginning back home. My phone, which I had kept on silent, began to light up like a slot machine. It was 9 a.m. This was likely the time Mom realized I wasn't coming over to prep the vegetables. 17 missed calls, 3 voicemails. I put on my headphones, but curiosity and a dark need for validation made me check the transcribed voicemails. Voicemail 1, Mom, 9:02 a.m. "Rachel, where are you? The door is locked. We need to start the marinade. Call me back immediately." Voicemail 2, Jessica, 9:15 a.m. "This isn't funny, Bella. Mom is crying. We don't have any food in the house because we thought you were bringing it. You need to get here now." Voicemail 3, Dad, 9:30 a.m. "Isabella, you are being incredibly selfish. Your mother is having a panic attack. If you don't walk through this door in 30 minutes with the food and my clubs, you are out of the will." I snorted aloud. The will? What will? The debt they were going to leave behind? The house that was falling apart? Or maybe he meant the debt from the credit cards they expected me to pay off. I looked out the window. The scenery was changing from suburban sprawl to industrial gray, and soon the skyline of the city would appear. "Mama, look!" Sophie pointed out the window. "Bridges!" "Yes, baby, bridges." I typed one single message into the family group chat. I wanted to be clear. I wanted it in writing. "I am not coming. I am not cooking. I am not buying gifts. I told Jessica last night, do not contact me again until you are ready to apologize to Sophie and me." Then I did something I should have done years ago. I went into the group chat settings, leave conversation. Then I went to my contacts. Block caller, Mom. Block caller, Dad. Block caller, Jessica. I took a deep breath. The silence that followed was absolute. It was terrifying, but it was also the most peaceful thing I had ever heard. "Are you okay, Mama?" Sophie asked, patting my hand. She sensed the shift in my energy. "I'm better than okay, Sophie." I squeezed her hand. "I'm free." The train rattled rhythmically, chanting, "Free, free, free." But back in my hometown, I knew the reality was crashing down on them. They had no food, no wine, no gifts, and most importantly, they had no money because they had relied on me to buy everything. Mom would have to go to the grocery store. She would have to navigate the Christmas rush herself. She would have to try to buy enough food for 12 people, including wealthy in-laws, with less than 48 hours to go. And she was counting on using the credit card she thought was in her purse, the one ending in 4598. I smiled a wicked little smile as the train entered the tunnel towards Penn Station. The show was just beginning. While Sophie and I were stepping onto the platform at Penn Station, breathing in the cold, electric air of New York City, a very different scene was unfolding 40 miles away. I wasn't there to see it, but between the angry voicemails I listened to later and the gleeful report I got from Aunt Martha, my dad's sister, who hated my mother's pretentiousness, I can reconstruct it perfectly. Panic had set in at the Mitchell household. When it became clear I wasn't showing up, Mom, Linda, went into crisis management mode. But Linda's version of crisis management usually involved screaming at people until they fixed things for her. Without me there to fix it, she was flailing. "We have nothing," she apparently shrieked at Dad. "No turkey, no prime rib, no wine. The Sinclairs are coming tomorrow." Jessica was useless, lying on the sofa crying about how her wedding was ruined because her sister was a jealous hag. Dad, hungry and irritable because his breakfast hadn't been made, finally snapped. "Well, go to the store, Linda. Buy the food. We'll just have to cook it ourselves. How hard can it be?" How hard can it be? Famous last words of men who haven't touched a stove in 30 years. So Mom and Jessica got into the car, Jessica's car, the one I paid to fix, and drove to the high-end grocery store, Whole Foods. It was December 23rd. The parking lot was a war zone. Inside, it was worse. The shelves were picked over. There were no organic turkeys left, no prime rib roasts. Mom had to settle for frozen turkeys and whatever cuts of meat she could find. But Linda Mitchell wasn't one to skimp when appearances were at stake. She piled the cart high. Lobster tails, because the beef was gone. Expensive cheeses. Cases of wine. Pre-made sides because neither of them knew how to cook from scratch. Truffle oil. Caviar. She was trying to buy her way out of the disaster. She was trying to buy the status she needed to impress the Sinclairs. According to Aunt Martha, who heard this from a neighbor who was in line behind them, the cart was overflowing. The total was racking up on the screen. $300, $500, $800. It finally stopped at nearly $1,200. Mom stood at the register, wearing her fur coat, looking down her nose at the cashier. She pulled out her wallet. She pulled out the Visa card, the emergency family card that was linked to my account, the one she used for her necessities. She swiped it with a flourish. Beep. Card declined, the cashier said flatly. Mom frowned. "That's impossible. Try it again. It's a chip error." She inserted the chip. Beep. Declined. "There must be a mistake with your machine," Mom announced loudly, causing the long line of stressed Christmas shoppers to groan. "This is my daughter's card. She has a high limit." "The machine says pick up card or reported stolen," the cashier said, her patience wearing thin. "Do you have another form of payment?" Jessica turned pale. "Mom, what's going on?" "I don't know. Bella must have messed up the bill payment." Mom was getting frantic now. She tried a different card, her own debit card. Beep. Insufficient funds. Of course, because they spent every dime of Dad's pension as soon as it came in, relying on me to cover the gaps. The line behind them was getting angry. People were shouting, "Move it, lady. We have places to be." The manager walked over. "Ma'am, you need to pay or leave the groceries." I can only imagine the humiliation. My mother, who prided herself on being the matriarch of the neighborhood, standing there in her fur coat, unable to pay for her groceries. She had to make a choice. She couldn't call Dad. He didn't have access to the money. She couldn't call me. I was blocked. She had to start putting things back. "Take off the lobster," she whispered, her face burning red. "Take off the wine. Take off the caviar." Piece by piece, her high-status dinner was dismantled on the conveyor belt. She ended up leaving with 2 frozen turkeys, some instant mashed potatoes, and box wine. She paid for the $150 total with cash she had in her purse, money likely meant for the housekeeper she also wouldn't be able to pay. They walked out of the store in silence, the automatic doors sliding shut behind them like a prison gate. Back in New York, Sophie and I were checking into the plaza. The lobbies smelled like pine needles and expensive perfume. The chandeliers were larger than my car. "Welcome to the plaza, Miss Mitchell," the receptionist beamed. She looked at Sophie, who was staring at the lights, flapping her hands gently. "And this must be Miss Sophie," the woman said, leaning over the counter. She didn't stare. She didn't look uncomfortable. She pulled out a small plaza teddy bear. "For you, mademoiselle. Welcome home." Sophie hugged the bear. "It's soft," she said. "We have upgraded you to a Park View suite," the receptionist winked at me. "It's Christmas, after all." I handed over my credit card, my own card, with my own money that I controlled. It swiped perfectly. "Thank you," I said, feeling tears prick my eyes again. As we rode the gold-plated elevator up to the 12th floor, I thought of my mother in the grocery store parking lot. I hoped she enjoyed the instant potatoes. The reality of the financial cliff my parents had walked off didn't fully hit them until they got home from the humiliating grocery trip. I learned later that Dad had been waiting for the Amazon delivery truck. He was pacing the driveway, looking for his Ping G425 golf set. The truck came. It dropped off a package at the neighbor's house. It drove past my parents' driveway without stopping. Dad stormed into the house as Mom and Jessica were unloading their sad, reduced grocery haul. "Where are the clubs?" he demanded. "Bella said she ordered them." "Bella didn't order anything," Jessica screamed, throwing a bag of frozen peas on the counter. "She blocked us. She cut off the credit card. Mom couldn't pay for the lobster." Dad turned purple. "She what? That card is linked to her account, but it's family money." "No, Robert." Mom slumped into a chair, looking older than I had ever seen her. "It's her money. We haven't put money into that account since 2019. The silence in the kitchen must have been heavy enough to crush them. For years, they had told themselves a story, that we were all pitching in, that money was fluid, that my contributions were just helping out. They had conveniently forgotten that I was the only one contributing. "Well, fix it," Dad shouted. "Call the bank. Tell them it's fraud." "I can't," Mom cried. "It's in her name. If I claim fraud and she proves she authorized the block, Robert, they could look into our spending on it." Dad went quiet. He knew. He knew about the gambling charges he'd put on that card, thinking I wouldn't notice. He knew about the cash advances. "So," Dad said, his voice trembling, "we have no gifts. We have frozen turkeys, and we have the Sinclairs coming tomorrow." "We have to make it work," Jessica wiped her mascara-stained eyes. "We just have to lie. We'll tell them Bella got sick. We'll tell them the clubs are delayed in shipping. We'll tell them, I don't know, we'll tell them something." "But the dinner," Mom moaned. "I don't know how to cook a turkey, Robert. Bella always does it." "Google it," Dad snapped. While they were descending into a hell of their own making, Sophie and I were entering heaven. Our suite was bigger than the entire first floor of my parents' house. There were 2 queen beds with duvets that felt like clouds. There was a view of Central Park, dusted with snow. "Mama, look!" Sophie pressed her hands against the glass. "The carriages, like in the fairy tales." "Yes, baby." We ordered room service, not because we had to, but because we could. We ordered pancakes for dinner. We ordered hot chocolate that came in a silver pot. I took a picture of Sophie sitting in the window seat, wrapped in a plush robe, holding her hot chocolate, with the lights of the city twinkling behind her. She looked peaceful. She looked valued. I opened Facebook. I hadn't posted in months. My family monitored my social media, usually to criticize my hair or my clothes. I uploaded the photo. I tagged the Plaza Hotel, and I wrote the caption. For years, I was told there wasn't enough room at the table, so I built my own table. Merry Christmas from the Plaza. Just the two of us, exactly where we are wanted. I hit post. I knew Cousin Tyler would see it. I knew Aunt Martha would see it. I knew the neighbors would see it. And I knew, eventually, word would get back to the Mitchell House of Horrors. If you are enjoying Bella's journey from doormat to Queen of the Plaza, please hit that like button and comment the number 1 below. Let me know you're with us. Your support helps me tell these stories. Type 1 now. Christmas Day arrived. In New York, it was magic. We went ice skating at Woolman Rink. Sophie fell down 3 times, and every time she got up laughing. Nobody rolled their eyes. A nice man from Texas even helped her up and told her she was tough as nails. We ate roasted nuts from a street cart. We saw the Rockettes. In my hometown, it was a tragedy. The Sinclairs arrived at 4 p.m. sharp. They were wealthy, yes. Mr. Sinclair was a retired judge, and Mrs. Sinclair was a philanthropist. But they weren't the snobs my mother imagined. They were people who valued integrity. They walked into a house that smelled wrong, not like roasting sage and butter. It smelled like burning. Mom opened the door, wearing a dress she couldn't afford, smiling a smile that looked like a rictus of terror. "Welcome, welcome," she chirped. "Merry Christmas." Brandon, Jessica's fiancé, looked around. "Where's Bella and Sophie? I brought a gift for the little one." Jessica stepped forward, linking her arm through Brandon. "Oh, terrible news. Bella came down with the flu, a stomach bug, very contagious. She didn't want to risk infecting anyone, so she stayed home." "Oh, that's a shame," Mrs. Sinclair said warmly. "We were looking forward to meeting the chef behind this famous beef Wellington we've heard so much about." Yes," Dad coughed. "Well, Bella sent the food over before she got sick, but, we decided to try a new recipe for the turkey." They sat down to dinner. It was a disaster. The turkey, which Mom had tried to fast thaw in hot water, a hygiene nightmare, and then blast in the oven, was burnt on the outside and raw in the middle. The instant potatoes were gluey. The wine was boxed wine poured into a decanter, but Mr. Sinclair took one sip and raised an eyebrow. "Interesting vintage," was all he said. The conversation was stilted. Mom kept trying to drop names of people she didn't know. Dad kept checking his watch, angry about his missing golf clubs. But the real bomb drop during dessert, store-bought pie that was still frozen in the center, Cousin Tyler, who had been invited at the last minute to fill the empty seats, pulled out his phone. Tyler was 19, addicted to social media, and had no filter. "Wait," Tyler said, frowning at his screen. "You guys said Bella was sick with the stomach flu?" "Yes," Jessica said quickly, glaring at him, "violently ill." "That's weird," Tyler said, loud enough for the whole table to hear. "Because she just posted a Facebook Live from a carriage ride in Central Park. She looks fine. Actually, she looks great." The silence that fell over the table was heavier than the raw turkey. "Let me see that," Brandon said. He took the phone. He watched the video. In it, Sophie was laughing, pointing at a pigeon. Bella was glowing, her cheeks pink from the cold. "Merry Christmas," Bella said to the camera. "We're heading to dinner at the Palm Court. Best Christmas ever." Brandon looked up. His face was unreadable. He looked at Jessica. He looked at Linda. "She's in New York," Brandon said, "at the Plaza." She must have posted an old video, Mom stammered. She's delirious from the fever. It's a live video, Linda, Tyler pointed out helpfully. It's happening right now. Mr. Sinclair cleared his throat. He was a judge. He knew when a witness was lying. Why would you lie about your sister being sick? He asked, his voice stern. Because she abandoned us, Jessica burst out, unable to hold the facade anymore. She was supposed to cook. She was supposed to pay for everything, and she just bailed on us because she's jealous. She was supposed to pay, Mrs. Sinclair repeated. I thought you said you were hosting. We are, Dad shouted, slamming his hand on the table. But she's the one with the... She helps out, and she refused to come because we told her there wasn't room at the table for her and the retard kid. The word hung in the air. Retard. Jessica gasped. Mom closed her eyes. Dad realized too late what he had said. Brandon stood up slowly. His face was pale. What did you call her? Brandon asked, his voice shaking. I didn't mean, Dad stammered. You told Bella there was no room for her daughter? Brandon asked. That's why she's not here? Sophie has... issues, Mom tried to whisper, leaning in as if seeking an ally. She's autistic. She flaps. She makes noises. We didn't want her to ruin your dinner. We did it for you, Brandon, for your parents. Mr. Sinclair stood up. He took his napkin and placed it gently on the table. Linda, Mr. Sinclair said, his voice cold as ice, my grandson, Brandon's nephew, is autistic. He is nonverbal. He is the light of our lives. Mom's face went white, like sheet white. If you think disability is something to be ashamed of, Mrs. Sinclair added, standing up to join her husband, then I don't think we share the same values at all. Brandon, Mr. Sinclair said to his son, we are leaving. You can stay if you wish. Brandon looked at Jessica. She was crying, her mascara running down her face, ruining the perfect look she had spent hours on. You lied to me, Brandon said. You told me Bella was busy. You told me Sophie didn't like crowds. You never told me you banned them. I just wanted it to be perfect, Jessica wailed. You want perfect? Brandon asked, taking his ring off his finger. Not the engagement ring, but a promise ring he wore. He set it on the table. Perfect is accepting your family. I think I need to go. The Sinclairs walked out. They left the raw turkey, they left the frozen pie, they left the Mitchells sitting in the ruins of their own bigotry. Back in New York, I was clinking a crystal glass of champagne with a stranger at the next table who had toasted to mothers and daughters. The vindication was happening, and I didn't even know it yet. The next morning, December 26th, I woke up to a phone that had essentially melted down. There were 50 missed calls from Mom, 20 from Dad, 15 from Jessica, and 1 voicemail from Brandon. I listened to Brandon's first. His voice sounded tired and humble. Hi, Bella. It's Brandon. I saw Tyler's video, and then I heard what your father said. I just wanted to say, I'm so sorry. I didn't know. I swear to God, I didn't know they excluded you. My parents and I walked out. I don't know what's going to happen with me and Jessica, but please give Sophie a hug from me. You're a good mom. I let out a breath I didn't know I was holding. Brandon was a good guy. He was just caught in the Mitchell web. Then, against my better judgment, I answered the phone when Dad called. Are you happy? He screamed the moment the line connected. Are you happy now, you spiteful witch? Merry Christmas to you too, Dad, I said, putting the phone on speaker so I could continue packing my suitcase. You ruined everything. The Sinclairs left. Brandon left. Jessica is hysterical. And the turkey was raw. That sounds like a cooking problem, I said coolly, not a me problem. You humiliated us. You posted that picture on purpose. I posted a picture of my Christmas, I said. If the truth humiliates you, maybe you should examine your behavior, not mine. You are cut off, Dad roared. Don't come back to this house. You are dead to us. Dad, I said, stopping my packing. Let's be clear about who is cutting off whom. I checked the deed to the house this morning online, just to remind myself. What? He faltered. The house. Grandma left it to me in her will, remember? But I let you live there because you couldn't afford the taxes. I pay the property taxes. I pay the insurance. I paid for the roof. Silence. So, I continued, my voice steady. I'm giving you 6 months. You have until June. Then I'm selling the house. I'm going to use the money to start a college fund for Sophie. Since she's the retard kid you don't want at your table, surely you don't want to live in her house. You can't do that, he sputtered, but the fight was gone from his voice. It was replaced by fear. I can and I will. And Dad, the credit card is canceled permanently. The phone plan you're on, I'm canceling that on Monday. You're a grown man. Figure it out. I hung up. I sat on the edge of the hotel bed. My hands were shaking, but this time it was from the sheer release of a burden I had carried for 10 years. I had been so afraid of losing them. I had been so afraid of being an orphan, but I realized now that I had been an orphan for a long time. They were just people who lived in my house and spent my money. Mama, Sophie asked from the bathroom door, are we going home? Yes, baby, I smiled at her, but things are going to be different now. Different good or different bad? Different good. We have a lot more room at our table now. The train ride home was quiet. When we arrived, the town looked the same, but it felt different. It felt smaller. It felt like a place I lived, not a place that defined me. In the weeks that followed, the fallout was spectacular. Jessica and Brandon didn't break up immediately, but the wedding was postponed. Brandon insisted on premarital counseling, specifically focusing on family boundaries and values. From what I heard, Jessica was forced to get a job at a receptionist desk because I wasn't funding her lifestyle anymore. Mom and Dad tried to love bomb me at first. They sent flowers, they left voicemails crying about how much they missed Sophie. I didn't bite. I maintained the boundary. No money, no dinners, no fixing. I saw them once at the grocery store 3 months later. Mom was buying store-brand pasta. She looked older. She saw me, and for a second, I thought she would scream. But she just looked down and hurried away. She was ashamed. And for the first time, she wasn't ashamed of me. She was ashamed of herself. I sold the big house in June, just like I promised. They moved into a small apartment on the other side of town. I took the proceeds and put them into a trust for Sophie. As for Sophie and me, we started a new tradition. Every Christmas, we go somewhere new. The next year, we went to a cabin in Vermont. The year after that, a beach in Florida. But we never forget that Christmas at the plaza. It was the year I lost my family, but it was the year I found myself. I realized that family isn't about blood. It's not about who shares your DNA. It's about who shares your table. It's about who makes space for you. If someone tells you there is no room for you at their table, don't try to squeeze in. Don't try to bake them a pie to change their mind. Don't buy them golf clubs. Build your own table. Make it bigger, make it brighter, and fill it with people who look at you and your children with love, not judgment. Because you deserve a seat. You always did. Thank you for listening to Bella's story. I am so grateful you stayed until the end. If you believe that Bella made the right choice, please type the letter A in the comments below. Let me know you are different from the rest, that you value self-worth. And if you have a story about standing up to family, share it. Don't forget to click the next video on the screen to hear another story of justice and truth. See you there.